Hello, Herlighters. It's Erin Foley back in the booth talking women's sports. So excited to be here with you. First of all, happy July 4th. I hope your holidays are filled with, I don't know, beers, burgers, impossible burgers where you take a bite and you're like, wait, someone served me a real burger. How can this be a real burger, even though it's made from I don't know, some crazy pea protein? And you're like, is this a carcinogen, but you can't stop eating it? I don't know. That was just my experience. Going to a pool party, that's my plan, which means I have to get a bathing suit, which means I have to try on bathing suits. And you know how it is. Women, I'd rather stab my eyeballs out. And then I was thinking right before I hit the record button, what would be the scenario? And I thought, would I rather wear like a Kim Mulkey suit, one of those insane suits she wears on the sidelines, to like a small, like chic Hollywood cocktail party, or try on bathing suits? It's a tie. They're both absolute torturous events for me. But I don't know. I guess maybe just for public embarrassment, I would pick bathing suits. It's all terrible. Anyway, that was like a random early into the podcast tangent. So there you go. I'm again so fired up for this episode. And yes, I say that every episode, but today, super fun guest, associate head coach UCLA Bruins softball team, Kirk Walker, is in the booth with me today. So we're talking softball. And even if you're not like, some crazy nerdy softball fan, hang in there with me because he's so passionate about the sport and he's got such great stories and it's really, really great. We had such a great interview. So I know you're going to love it. And of course, when I'm doing my nerdy deep dive research on him, on the sport of softball, it brings back all these really fun memories. And it took me back to this moment where I think maybe I was like, I don't know, 7 years old, 7 or 8 years old, maybe even like 6 years old, when I got my first softball glove. And I remember I can't even remember what I did yesterday, but I remember these moments. I remember being sick. Like I had a bad, it was in the summer, I had a bad cold or something. So I wasn't out buying the glove with my dad. He came home one day and he gave me the glove. Of course, I started crying. I'll probably cry right now. And it was just like the greatest day ever, right? So I was like, oh my God, it's my first glove. And of course, I couldn't watch softball on TV until like later on in the Olympics. But I was watching a lot of baseball with my dad, and I was playing a ton of little league softball. And it started this really fun thing that my dad and I used to do where, you got to prep the softball glove. You got to, we would take old newspapers and we'd put them out, and then you get your oil because you had to like really work in the glove with like a ton of oil, and then you'd put the softball into the glove and you take a rubber band and you'd mold the glove around the softball. I'm getting fired up just thinking about doing this again because I have to get a new glove. I'm going to be doing this when I'm 80. I don't care. So it was just this really cool thing that we did together. And I was just, I was obsessed with my glove. And I got so excited. This is slightly embarrassing, but I don't even care. I slept with my softball glove. I was so excited to have a softball glove that I slept with it for like 2 months. And then my mom realized that I had been in bed sleeping with my softball glove. And she was like, Erin, do not sleep with your softball glove. And I was like, why? It just seems like the most natural thing in the world to be sleeping with a softball glove. Wow. Yes. Then I went on to date men briefly. Anyway, here's the point. Obviously obsessed with softball since I was a little kid. And I was a pitcher. And I really, at that time, it was like I was doing the whole full windmill fast pitch. And my dad hung a tire between two trees in our backyard. And at the time, we lived in Connecticut, and it was a huge softball community. That's all we played. And I would every day for hours be in the back. And if you got the ball through the tire, that was, right down in the middle of the strike zone. But if you hit the tire, that was also a strike. And I would do it for hours and hours and hours. And I just was obsessed. And then in the summer, right before my seventh grade, going into seventh grade, my dad got some sort of job transfer. He was in sales at the time. before he had a midlife crisis and he went into commercial fishing. That was a fun time for our family. Anyway, that's a different podcast. That would probably be called Issues with Dad. But I did obviously R.I.P. Dick Foley, but he's just a tremendously wonderful influence in my life because we played so much sports together. So he gets this job transfer, and we wind up transferring to or moving to Rhode Island. And it came down to two high schools. Now, my mother was a school teacher. She was a Catholic school teacher. And my older sister, crazy nerd, in the best way. She is now a professor at Baylor University. So there were education, education, education. But Narragansett, so it came down to Narragansett High School or South Kingstown High School. Narragansett High School had fast pitch softball. South Kingstown High School had slow pitch softball. Well, these are two different games, and I was a fast pitch pitcher. So my dad and I were like pleading, be like, we got to go to Narragansett. We got to move to Narragansett. I was like, I don't care about it academically. Later in life, probably I did. But all I wanted to do was pitch, fast pitch. Well, South Kingstown, I don't know how it is now, but South Kingstown at the time was better academically. So we moved to South Kingstown. Believe me, I had such a fantastic high school experience. College, I'm like, but high school was just so fun. And wound up playing softball, but slow pitch softball. And I really did not enjoy it. I stopped pitching, but then transferred to left field, loved playing the outfield, loved my team, but it is such a wildly different game. Like there's no stealing. It's like a moon ball that like drops in. It's just a whole different game. And the pitching, I just was like, I don't want to throw it all up, in this crazy arc and have it come down. I didn't like it. Love left field, love my team. Did we win the state championships? And I was one of the only two people to play varsity freshman year and win the state championships. Yes. Let's hit Glory Days. This Glory Days just came on in the background. Of course, so much fun. But I'll never forget my dad and I pleading to go to Narragansett High School so I could continue pitching. But as you know, it really, even if softball fan, not a softball fan, fast pitch softball is one of the greatest sports to play, and it is one of the greatest games to watch. And that's why I'm so excited to talk to our guest today, Kirk Walker. He has been on the Bruins, the UCLA Bruins coaching staff for 22 years. He was coach for UCLA for 10 years. Then he was the head coach of Oregon State for almost 20 years. Then he came back to the UCLA coaching staff, which we'll talk about. He helped UCLA to 7 NCAA championships, 17 women's college World Series appearances, and he was the first out gay male coach in NCAA Division I history. Mind-blowing. He truly is a pioneer in the world of women's softball and an LGBTQ icon, and you're going to love him, so let's jump right in. Obviously, I'm slightly biased because I'm a huge UCLA fan, but I just love your story. The trio of Lisa Fernandez, obviously the other associate head coach, and then head coach Kelly Inouye Perez, and yourself, given that you were an undergrad at UCLA, and then you wound up coaching them, coaching UCLA for 10 years, leaving head coach Oregon State, and then coming back. It's such a unique story. And I thought, maybe you could just talk us through that for a couple minutes because it's super cool.
Yeah, it really is. It's a great long relationship that we've all built. And I was an undergrad. I think I must have been a senior, I think, when Kelly came in as a freshman. At that point, I was an undergrad assistant in coaching and then got hired full time. So Kelly came in the year before Lisa, and I actually recruited Kelly. The head coach, Sue Enquist and Sharon Backus, hadn't really seen Kelly play. So I was actually really responsible for recruiting Kelly because she broke her leg the year before when you would have been highly recruited. But I had seen her for years before that because I was coaching travel ball. So when this opportunity came up to recruit Kelly, I'm not going to lie, we knew that she was very connected to Lisa. We knew that Lisa was going to be our number one recruit the following year. but Kelly really was a phenomenal catcher. And so I convinced Sharon and Sue that we should be going after her. She wasn't playing. She was in a big old cast, but we ended up signing Kelly, brought Kelly in. Kelly came in her freshman year, and really is what is so unique about Kelly is that she has this personality that is just engaging and connecting. She's a caregiver. She likes to take care of people, but she's a super competitor. And she came in her freshman year and made a big impact against Michelle Smith's team.
Ah,
This was a good story. So we were playing Oklahoma State in the College World Series in Sunnyvale when it wasn't in Oklahoma City.
we'll get to
And
that. We will get to that.
yes, I saw that question. And we were losing to Oklahoma State, and they had made a pitching change, and they had brought in Michelle Smith to close out the game, and we brought in a pinch hitter, freshman Kelly Inouye Perez, and they were over there in their dugout looking for scouting information, and there was nothing on her because she was a freshman, and she came in, and she was hit power pitching pretty well, came in and came up with a big clutch double that scored actually my sister, who was on second base, to tie the game, and we ended up going on to win and won the College World Series that year. So that was Kelly's
Wow.
freshman year.
Wow.
And loved working with Kelly. Kelly was a great athlete. She was our backup catcher. But then obviously her sophomore year, here comes Lisa Fernandez, her longtime best friend and teammate, and she comes in as a freshman. So got the chance to coach both of them. And I will say this is that, we spent an enormous and obscene amount of hours together at the field, whether that be washing our cars, throwing batting practice, catching, taking ground balls. Lisa always wanted to work out, outside of practice because she didn't want to take away time from what she was doing during practice. So the three of us spent a lot of time together for the next 3 to 4 years while they were both playing undergrads. And to be honest with you, we always talked about coaching together. We talked about, wouldn't it be great, when Kirk's the head coach and we'll get to do this, lay out in the sun at the field while we're washing our cars, and we get to do this, all the time. And so we laughed and joked about that, and so we got very close, and definitely two of my closest friends. They happened to be athletes that were on the team at the time. Fast forward, I actually got the opportunity to go to Oregon State. As I was going to Oregon State, Kelly was literally just finishing up school and trying to figure out what she wanted to do. And Kelly got offered my position when I left and took the head coaching job at Oregon State. And the conversation was, are they going to come to Oregon State with me? Are we going to figure out to coach together? Kelly ends up getting my job there at UCLA, and stays on there, and obviously worked her way up and obviously took over. So, fast forward to 18 years later,
So cool.
Kelly's the head coach, Lisa's the assistant, and we've been still very, very close. I coached Lisa on my women's major team for many, many of those years, 3 national titles in a row during that time. So we were still very close. And, there was an opportunity. The program had taken a little bit of a dip, a little bit of a dive. And Kelly was going through a little bit of growing pains, a little bit as a head coach. And, there was a little bit of a concern about what to do next and who to hire, who to bring in. So I'd been on the phone with her and was on the phone with Sue Inquest, the former head coach, who was still very close with all of us. And we're trying to figure out who to hire, who would be a good fit, who could help kind of elevate the program. And, Sue kept saying, Kirk, you're the one that I need to hire. You need to come back. You need to come in. And we laughed about it. I'm like, ha, ha, ha. There's no way. I've got a family now. I'm settled in Oregon. I'm like, I'm close to retiring. And, it was a joke, ha, ha, ha. And then a few weeks later, it went from being a joke, ha, 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 to like, oh my gosh, I think this is what needs to happen. And I had a contract on my desk to sign at Oregon State that was probably going to be my last. And I had to go into the AD and say, I know we negotiated this contract, and I love this program, but I think I'm going back to UCLA. And he was amazing at the time, Bob DeCarolis, and he knew that this was not about money. He knew this was about me going back home to help the program. And he said, who do I need to hire here? and I said, you need to hire Laura Berg, who was my assistant at the time. And so I got them in place. But yeah, coming back to UCLA, it was a chance for us all to coach together. But most importantly, my commitment to Kelly to get the program into a better place, to be back in the winning way and to be back at the College World Series. That was home to me. And I didn't really plan on coaching a lot longer, but she said, well, give me 10 years. And I'm like, 10 years? That's a lot more than I planned on coaching. And now it's been 13. So, so to be back to coaching together was great, to get the program back. And we have a unique relationship. We're very, very close. Sometimes it gets in our way. Most of the time, it's just very trusting, and we know that where everyone's coming from. So even when we disagree, which is often, and that's okay, we all know exactly where we're coming from. The girls on the team often think that Lisa and I are like an old married couple, because
it sounds like a family. Yeah.
How we communicate just
Yeah.
literally on everything on a daily basis is like bickering. We don't know anything different. And they're like, you guys stop arguing. And we look at each other, we're like, we're not arguing. We're just talking. This is how we talk. Yeah. Lisa and I have a unique relationship that's been great. And then obviously Kelly as the head coach, it's been great. Sorry to digress, but it's definitely been
that's
amazing.
the beauty of a podcast. I was just fascinated because, obviously I go to games and I feel like I know, you know some stuff on the outside, but then when I was doing sort of my deep dive prep, I had no idea that you coach them. Maybe I listened to another podcast or something and I was like, whoa. And now you're telling me, I know I'm a nerd, but I had no idea Kelly and Lisa were like best friends and played together.
Since they were 9 years old. Yeah. They started playing with each other. Yeah. And so they were pitcher and catcher their whole lives. And again, which is a story that I knew because I was coaching travel ball against them. So when we knew we were going to go after Lisa, and we were obviously Kelly was an elite athlete, but it was like, Kelly has a broken leg. I'm like, we want her. We're going after her. And she's super connected to Lisa. That's going to be a great fit. Lisa came in, and obviously the rest is history. So.
Well, I mean, yeah. And for listeners that don't really know, nerdy softball, I mean, Lisa Fernandez, I'm still blown away. I mean, she is the GOAT. She's the greatest of all time. I mean, yeah, you could argue that, but I would win. She's the greatest of all time. But like when I first started going to UCLA games, I did sit like, first base side or whatever. And I just couldn't believe that like that was Lisa Fernandez like 10 feet away. Like, and there's all these little girls, and it's so cute to see, obviously, people cheering for current players and all that stuff. But I literally thought, I wonder how many people know in this stadium. Like, I'm hoping the little girls still know, holy crap, that's Lisa Fernandez.
They do. And
okay,
they
good.
do know, but most of the time they know because of their moms. So their moms, our generation, exactly. They're like going gaga over Lisa Fernandez. And so obviously they told their daughters and told their daughters and told their daughters. And so now their daughters are running around wanting Lisa Fernandez autograph. Yes, they want Maya Brady, and yes, they want Rachel Garcia and those current relevant, big star players. But Lisa does sign quite a few autographs. And it does my heart well to see that, because, I do think she is the greatest of all time. And not just because of what she accomplished physically, but what she really did for our sport here in the U.S., what she did for the country, and a lot of things that people don't know, what she sacrificed and gave up, and how she put the country on her shoulders. Really, there's nobody that could have ever done that like Lisa Fernandez.
That's really good to hear, because it is like, I mean, all we had, of course, we say this a lot during the podcast, is like, when I was growing up, you had tennis, and then you had Olympics, for women's sports, so that's really how, and I played softball, of course, nonstop growing up. And that was like, your heroes were these Lisa Fernandez, and that was the only time you could really see softball. So just to see her, I remember the first time I was at a game, I was like, okay, just calm down. It was just like a moment where I was like, holy shit. It was just really cool. But yeah, to hear your story. Okay, so I just absolutely love the third base candy toss. And for listeners, anytime there's a home run, on the UCLA team, which so cool because there's a lot of home runs, you toss them as they're rounding third, you toss them a piece of candy, and I need to know how this started.
Yeah, it's a funny story. So it was when I got back to UCLA. It was probably my second or third year back to UCLA, and Ali Carta and Steph LaRosa, they were on the team at the time, and we were playing a game. I was coaching third base. I always had candy in my pocket. If anybody knows me, I'm a candy fiend. It's awful, and I always have candy in my pocket. And the girls would always ask, "Hey, can I have a piece of candy?" And I'm like, "No, I'm coaching third base. I'm stranded out here. You're in the dugout, get your own candy." I'm like, no, I'm like, I'm not going to give you candy in my pocket because that's what I need when I'm standing at third base. And so they used to always tease me. Well, we were playing a game, playing somebody that we should have been beating way more than we were. It was a 0-0 ball game in like the fourth or fifth inning. And I turned to the dugout and I said, okay, that's it. The next person that hits a home run is getting a piece of candy. And they were like, oh, they're all crazy, whatever. Well, it was another inning or so later. It wasn't that same inning. That would be a really good story. But it was about an inning later. Steph LaRosa, big home run hitter for us, and she came up, hits a home run. She comes running around third, and she says to me as she's running third, just like this, she goes, "Where's my candy, coach?" And I'm like, literally just exactly like that. She had that kind of swag attitude. And she rounded third, and I laughed and I laughed, and I reached in my pocket, and she hit home. And as she was walking back to the dugout, I tossed her a piece of candy. And that was really the start of it. It was a pretty big tradition. I had to find the right candy, the right,
Yeah, what
that would
is it?
fly.
It's Jolly Rancher? What is it? It feels
Well,
like
it's kind of evolved. So it was Jolly Ranchers, or it was Starburst, or it was something. But what I definitely found was there was these Jolly Ranchers that were called the Crunch and Chew Jolly Ranchers, and they were a little different. They were hard on the outside and chewy on the inside, but they had this wrapper. I threw them; they hung in the air. I'm like, this is perfect. So that became the thing: was these Crunch and Chew Jolly Ranchers. Jolly Ranchers stopped making them. So
oh,
I've had to research and find other candies. So I'm struggling a little bit. I'm throwing candy with a little bit of like anger right now because they don't have the right candy. But we had one year, this is a funny story. We had one year where our strength coach just was kind of like, I just feel like we're sending the wrong message here nutritionally. Like, we're rewarding them with candy and blah, blah, blah. And I said, no one on our team is hitting more than 20 home runs in a year. I'm like,
yeah.
it's got 0 calories in it. I'm like, are you kidding me? But he was really adamant about it. So that year I threw Tangelos. I had the tangerine that you can
No.
peel in my pocket, and I was tossing those during the year. So
And that was
the
the year
minute that
you scored no home runs because everyone
no,
was
we
just
still had
like,
lots of home
boo,
runs, and I had these
boo.
I had these Tangelos in my pocket that were like hot and gross and whatever.
So
And I would toss them.
gross.
They weren't going to eat them. They were gross. But that lasted for a year. Then he actually shifted sports, and he was with another sport, and we were right back to the Jolly Ranchers.
Yeah.
So
I love it.
so
I love it. Yeah, I had to ask. I like that the strength coach was like suddenly dismissed under mysterious circumstances. They're like, beat it with the oranges. We need the hard candy. Anybody can show us how to lift weights. Get the hell out of here.
oh yeah, it was kind of funny. It was
Yeah.
it was definitely a fun story, but yeah, it's been
Oh, I love it.
interesting. And yeah, actually we did Jolly Rancher did actually tweet out one time at the College World Series because they had tweeted something about a home run or whatever, UCLA softball home run. And I was like, wait, I need an NIL deal. I'm like, come on, let's go.
Absolutely.
Right. And then they
Yeah.
stopped making the candy. So I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, we need to get we need to get Holly Rowe on this. We need an investigative reporter to back the Jolly Rancher truck up and sponsor the team.
Oh
That's
gosh.
really fun. All right, here's a random question. This is unplanned. I want to discuss like third base coach, first base coach. My job, I always said the dream job is first base coach because really, I'm not obviously it's important. I'm just saying, what do you really say to a batter when they get to first base that they don't already know? These kids have been playing since they were like 6 months old, and it's like, you hand them maybe now the sleeve so they don't cut their hand on a slide.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
feel like that would be like I could do that in a lazy boy. I could have a flask. I would be like, this is the greatest job of all time. But third base coach to me is very stressful because of the whole sending the runner. When do you send? When do you not to send? And
Yeah.
eventually, I do have to ask you about the 2019 sending the runner. I know
Yeah.
that's super nerdy, but I
No,
I lost
that's
my
okay.
mind watching that game. But do you get to shit talk Lisa and go, you basically just have to put a sleeve on that woman's hand and I
Well,
have to do
listen,
all the dirty work?
yeah, listen, this is a funny story. It is a very funny story. First of all, the first base coach gets mega TV time because
Yeah.
every time a runner gets on first base, they're right in their ear, talking to them, high fiving them, whatever, putting the glove on, right? I'm like, she gets mega TV time. Well, it's already Lisa Fernandez. So she's already getting most of the
Yeah.
TV time, anyways, right? So it will be the funniest thing. I'm like, well, yeah, Lisa's over there just getting all of her TV time every time a runner gets on first base.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of responsibility that does happen at first base, and sending the runner to second is actually just as critical as sending a runner home. And we had a few times this year that Lisa had sent a runner to second, and I was giving her a look like, "What are you doing?" And she's like, giving me one of these. But obviously, it is a funny thing, and it has definitely come up with my hope pending retirement in the not too far future at some point. That is Lisa going to take over at third base? And Lisa's like, no.
Well, I mean, sending a
But
runner to second, like you mean stealing, like
well,
essentially, like
on
when
a
to.
on a double, right? So a ball hit to the fence. There's a runner on second base, and
I gotcha. Okay.
the
Okay.
runner on first end up going to second. Well, sometimes the
Okay.
outfield they throw right to second. They throw the runner out, and it ends an
Right.
inning. And you're like just
I gotcha.
it's happening
Yeah.
right in front of you. But
Right. Right.
yeah. So
No, that is true. That is true. I just, it's just one of these things where sometimes you watch a lot and, you're taught as a little kid, like, don't watch the ball, watch the coach, right? It feels like nobody watches the coach. More in softball. I feel like more in softball than baseball, I feel like more softball players watch the coach. But when you watch baseball games, nobody is looking at they're looking behind them. It's like what not to do, you know? So I literally was like, I want to coach first base. But that is true. That is a little bit more pressure. It
yeah,
could be like, an out at
but it's good
second.
TV time. It's good TV
It's
time
good
though.
TV time.
Yeah,
But the
it really
third
is.
base coach, I do feel like that is I don't know. I feel like that's I don't want to do third base. I just want to do
you you
I just want to
you
do
definitely
first
get
base.
judged a little bit more, right? I mean,
Well,
you
the
you are
play
the
to plate
scapegoat.
versus a play at second,
Yeah,
obviously. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah. It definitely can be. It can definitely be. If you
yeah.
let it get in your head, it'll make you make a lot of bad decisions. Is what I'll say. So I
So
I,
it's
I
just
try and keep that out of my head.
yeah.
Yeah,
So what do you
yeah.
do? Like, all right, so just let's nerd out for a second. Head coach at Oregon State for so long. By the way, that must have been Oregon State must have been so, I mean, you're like the all-time winningest coach in Oregon State. You put that program on the map. First time to ever go to the Women's College World Series. Like huge. I mean, that was just an unbelievable accomplishment. So they must have been like just so annoyed. But I'm glad you came back to us. Um, but like the head coach versus, associate coach, third base coach, like, do you prefer, like, are there a lot of most head coaches obviously are in the dugout, but like, can you just talk to me like just a little bit about like, would you prefer to be on the field or in the dugout? Like, how is that transition?
Yeah, I mean, I prefer being on. I would always prefer to be on the field. I think one of the things that I definitely feel like there's a sense for the game. Like we as coaches have very little to do with the outcome of a game, but we have the opportunity to facilitate and engage the athletes in a way that they to empower them to make a difference in the ball game, right? So, even when it's calling signals or whatever it might be, I have always wanted to be able to help facilitate the athletes to succeed. And whatever that takes, whether that be dropping a bunt or taking an extra base or stealing on a team. I love to read the defense. I love seeing the shifts that a defense gets put on and watching the vibe of a player covering a base, right? So you can just kind of see the shortstop. Maybe she's taking 3 hard steps, and then the next pitch she takes 2 hard steps. The next pitch she just kind of turns and looks, and you're like, oh, she's kind of opening the door because she doesn't want
Yeah.
to work that hard all the time. So those are the things that I love to watch and see. I love being out there. It's great. I definitely feel like it's a fun part of the game. We as coaches don't have a great impact on the game, in my opinion, but if we can help facilitate in some way, it's pretty fun.
And do you guys have like specific roles? Are you more like
Yeah.
you know, hitting versus Lisa's pitching and like how does I know I know just from watching so many games and then of course the World Series, Kelly took a lot of she took over the actual pitching.
Pitch. Yeah, yeah. Well, one of the great things about our staff and the three of us is that we really can mesh and we all can do the pitching. We've all did pitching together, right? When Lisa was
Yeah.
pitcher and Kelly was her catcher, like we spent all that time in the bullpen. So we definitely have a mindset that works very similar, very synonymously. And so it's very easy for us to ebb and flow. Lisa shifted to take over the offense a little bit more this last year. And in doing so, we wanted to free her up a little bit less time in the bullpen. So Kelly, which Kelly is a great game caller. She was as a catcher and certainly still is. And so that was one thing that we really thought, let's take advantage of Kelly calling the game more than Lisa, because the year before Lisa was calling the game, and I will be honest with you, I don't know that that's Lisa's strength because Lisa knew how to call a ball game for her,
Mm,
and she knew what she wanted. But if a pitcher wasn't delivering something, it put a lot of pressure on Lisa trying to figure out, strategically where she was going to go with it. So I don't think it was necessarily the best scenario. I do think Kelly calling the game is one of the best scenarios we could ever have because it's her
yeah.
strength, and she manages pitchers really well. Not always on their A game, right? It could be their B game or their C game, and then obviously she knows hitters. The great thing about it is that Lisa really was able to dive deep into hitting, which she hadn't done in a few years, and it was great to see her really evolve as a hitting coach. And for me, it's really fun facilitating, helping Lisa and Kelly, but probably more so Lisa, really evolve as a coach. She was such a phenomenal, the GOAT, right? An
Yeah.
athlete. But that doesn't always mean that you're going to be a
Right?
great coach.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there were certain, like Lisa's mindset was so different than most people. I mean, she's that Mamba mentality, just like Kobe or any of those other phenoms, Tiger, the greats, that just
Yeah.
their mind was so different that if an athlete can't match with that same mindset, how are you going to coach them?
Yeah.
So it was really been a fun journey to watch Lisa really evolve in this last 10 years, but certainly this last year. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's such an interesting point because you figured if you're playing at like the highest level a player can possibly play at, and then you have a player, you would just go, well, just play better. You know what I mean? Like,
or just
like that's
this is how you should
yeah,
be thinking. Just
yeah,
do this. This makes
yeah,
sense. Why wouldn't you just do this? Like, I don't
yeah.
understand. Do I have to tell you that? You know what I
But
mean?
you
So
do.
it is interesting, but
Yeah,
you kind
yeah,
of do. And
yeah,
at the same time, Lisa also brings an unfair baggage with her, which is she is the GOAT. So when you have a team of athletes that are being coached by the GOAT, it's intimidating. Like when Lisa
yeah.
Fernandez is saying, "Hey, I need you to do this, this, and this," you're like, "Oh."
Oh
Like,
crap!
oh my God, it wasn't just the coach asking, it was Lisa Fernandez asking.
I
So,
know. Yeah, yeah,
that's unfair to her, but
yeah,
yet it is what it is. And
yeah,
she's done an amazing job of being vulnerable, which is what breaks down that barrier. And she's done a great job. It's been so fun to watch. So proud of her. The vulnerability that she's shown as a coach with the athletes, and it really has elevated her game to a whole nother level. So Lisa really focused this last year on hitting. I throw batting practice daily, so I was kind of helping with hitting with her. I oversee the defense. Lisa kind of works primarily with the infield. I work with the outfield, but I oversee team defense. I obviously run the offense in terms of calling signals. Kelly really focused on the bullpen this year. And yeah, so we're able to kind of mesh and blend into each other. And then we have healthy conversations and arguments
yeah,
about what we're doing at times, disagreements, um, less arguments, more differences of opinion than I would say.
yeah.
But yeah,
The the interesting well, when Kelly took over the signal calling, I was started to get really it's just always in the last couple of years now that I can, you can just watch so much more, which is we'll get to too, which I think obviously is a huge, a factor of the women's game growing is I didn't realize that like every single, I assumed also there was more freedom, and maybe it's different with teams. Maybe you could speak on that, like a little bit more freedom between the catcher and the pitcher of what pitch is, going to be thrown. But it feels like, you know, every pitch is every pitch called by Kelly. And then the sort of now you can wear a watch. That was kind of mind blowing. And so it just goes right. Is it like, how does that work? I know I just
Yeah.
asked you 17
So
questions because I'm excited and I had too much coffee, but how
so
does that
that's
work?
okay. So I think it does. It kind of depends on the program and the situation. That sometimes catchers and pitchers do have a voice. Sometimes they'll take over the calling for any given situation. Kelly certainly is directly connected with them. So between innings, they're communicating. Even during an inning, Kelly might look at the pitcher and go, "Hey, I'm this pitch or this pitch," and she'll kind of they'll kind of make some decisions there. But ultimately, Kelly was really in a position of calling every pitch, and I think that when you have so much information and so much scouting is done prior,
Mm.
unless your pitchers and catchers have done that, you're really at an unfair disadvantage when it comes to the pitch calling. You certainly can, as a pitcher, you always know you want to be committed to the pitch you throw. So you want to feel like when a pitch is called, you can fully commit to it. If you can't, you certainly have the ability to shake it off. And so our pitchers would shake off a pitch. If they shook off a pitch, generally our catcher would flash down a separate signal, or they would call timeout and kind of would start over again. But oftentimes, I think the pitchers and catchers and Kelly were pretty much on the same page because they had met beforehand, talked about how they were going to attack certain hitters, what some tendencies they might do, or more importantly, how they might use certain pitches during the day to set up certain hitters and different things. So it's not as autonomous as it may appear by the watch command, but it certainly is a new generation where most of the pitches are called from the dugout.
And the watch for
Watch.
listeners that don't know what I'm talking about, they used to have like a, and some people still do, like what I always said, a trapper keeper on their arm. The amount of paperwork, it literally felt
Yeah.
like a filing system, this huge, uh
Yeah.
whatever you call it. I don't even know what you call it. I
It's a
call it a
grid.
trapper.
It's
A
a
grid.
pitch grid.
Okay.
Yeah.
A
It's got
pitch grid on their
100
arm.
pitches on it. Yeah.
That
I
to me
think it's,
seems mind blowing. But now it's
yeah,
like just like an Apple Watch type of thing.
yeah, it's kind of evolved. Well, they opened up electronics this last year, and they basically the option is that all the defenders can wear basically it is just basically a one-way direction watch, which we can send signals from an iPad in the dugout. So we could send defensive signals or pitches out to the team, and they can take a quick look and obviously then know what's coming. So that was kind of a new generation. There is also the ability, if you could put, if you so wanted, headphones electronically in the
Oh
catcher's
God.
ear, and you can have one-way communication verbally to the catcher only, not to the whole defense. But most catchers are like, I don't want to hear the coaches talking in my ear while I'm trying to
Yeah.
play a game. But
Yeah.
yeah, that has evolved from the wristband, which was the pitch signals, which kind of simplified it. But back in the day, it was the
Yeah, the
touching the
old
nose
school. Yeah. Yeah.
and the signals coming in from the dugout, and so yeah, you still see the variation of all of those happening, but more and more, I think everyone went pretty much to the wristbands, and more now we're starting to see the wristwatch electronics.
I would like it to evolve where the fans, particularly myself, can wear a wristwatch. So I know if the center fielder needs to come in a couple steps, what pitch count it is. And that's what I would like as a fan. I think that would
Oh my
be
gosh!
freaking awesome. I'd be like,
Well,
Maya, get it, go to your left 2 steps and be like,
that could be
is that
a new
Erin
hosting,
Foley?
right?
What is happening?
Hosting role rather than the PA just or the color commentator on
Yeah.
television only.
Yeah.
Maybe they need a color commentator for what's happening in the stands live, right? So the PA announcer could be going like, I don't know where Maya Brady's playing, but this girl looks like she's going to go up the middle. So we could have a comedian like you talking about the game for the fans. It would definitely change the
Absolutely.
element of the game. but yeah, I
I
don't know.
say,
I
say
don't know
we
if the
try
players
it.
would like it.
Be like, can she please stop talking because we're trying to concentrate on the game, and be like, I can't. I'm too.
Right.
I
At
love
least when
all of
you're
this.
watching TV, if you don't like the announcers, you can always turn the sound off. If you're at
Yeah,
the field, I don't know. That would be kind of hard. You have to put headphones on or something.
maybe I'll do it in between innings. We'll talk. We'll talk about this off screen. Um,
Okay.
okay, this is maybe not the. Well, I feel like it's a huge deal, but maybe it's just because I don't like change in sports, also in life. But the Pac-12, to me, it's a heartbreaker. I mean, I'm like, East Coast, grew up with Big East, New Yorker, but now I've been out here, 16 years, and I'm full Pac-12 teams, obviously just basically just UCLA, but I love all the competitiveness between Cal and Stanford and all of it. Obviously, no Pac-12, now Big Ten. We don't need to talk about like how it happened, but how does this affect you as a coaching staff and recruiting and all of it?
Yeah. It's definitely been a blow. I mean, I've spent 42 years in the conference, or 40 year, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I've only coached in the Pac-10, the Pac West, or currently the Pac-12. So it's always been a Pac conference. So um, this next year will be the first year that we are not playing Arizona and Arizona State on our schedule in
Crazy.
40 years. So it's really interesting, obviously, to lose that opportunity to be in the conference. It's very sad to me. It's been very challenging and very difficult. It was actually about a year ago. It was probably 3 years ago to this week that I found out. I was actually on a phone call with Mega Ronowitz and Holly Rowe, and it came across the ticker, and they said, "Oh my God, this is happening!" And I'm like, "What?" And it was about UCLA and USC leaving the conference, and my heart sank
Yeah.
because that's the only thing that I've known my whole life, and so it's been challenging. I will say, on the flip side, because I'm a positive person by nature, um, I'm super excited about the pairing of UCLA excellence, what UCLA stands for academically, athletically, and marrying that into the Big Ten Conference, because the Big Ten Conference is known for academic excellence and excellence in all areas when it comes to student athlete welfare. So I feel like UCLA aligns really well with that conference. So I do think that there's been some great positive things that have started to come from that transition. And I'm keeping an open mind to the
Yeah.
travel. But it's going to be interesting, right? There's going to be new rivalries that come, and new experiences for our athletes that never happened before. So it is exciting. At the same time, I will always mourn the passing of the Pac-12. I guess the Pac-12 is not gone per
Yeah.
se yet. It's on hiatus. They have 2 years to reform without losing the status as a conference automatic. So it'll be interesting to see if anything comes of that. But yeah, Teresa Gould is taking the lead, who's an amazing administrator, and if anybody can pull it off, she certainly can.
Yeah, it will be. The new rivalries are super cool. And then hopefully you can do, yeah, out of conference games with I mean, UCLA not playing Arizona seems insane. I mean, it's like that was just basically the building blocks of NCAA softball. I mean, what do you guys have, like, if there's, I don't know what this, I can't remember the number. If there's like 50 championships, you guys have like 35 of them between you, or, something
Yeah,
like that. It's
it's
insane.
it's something that's pretty insane, and
Yeah.
obviously that rivalry goes way back. So yeah, I think I've been communicating with Caitlin and trying to figure out how we can pair up and keep some rivalry alive
Yeah.
between the two programs. Yeah.
Yeah. The travel, though, did you don't have to name names or anything, but were you talking to players in the last couple of years? And did you have to say, like, hey, listen, this is going to be, no Pac-12, but like this is how our sort of new vision is with it? Because the travel, I can imagine, the ease of which, California and Oregon and Washington, players, you would naturally assume like that is just going to be obviously a decision they have to make to do so much traveling now.
Yeah, I mean, I think the transition out of the conference has been a conversation recruiting wise for the last
Yeah.
3 years, ever since those
Yeah.
first announcements came out. So it's been part of the conversation, and I think it's been relatively positive when you really start to actually look at it. I think one of the harder things was the competitiveness of the Pac-12 and that going away.
Yeah.
Just how strong that conference was, and how iron, breeds iron, and just the strength of those teams competing against each other that was harder more than the travel conversation, to be honest with you.
Oh, that's
But
interesting.
I think that, the travel in our conference, we don't really drive anywhere. We fly everywhere we go in our conference. So USC doesn't have a team, so we don't drive across town, but we go to Arizona, we're flying. We go to the Bay Area, we're flying. We go to Oregon, we're flying. We go to Washington, we're flying. We go to Utah, we're flying. So everywhere we were going, we
Yeah.
were already flying. So it's now a difference of we're getting on a flight that's going, an extra 2 hours or an extra hour in a different direction versus going north. We're going, east. So it will be interesting. Certainly, some of the travel could be farther, and we're only talking about, 3 to 4 weekends out of the year, because our conference is half at home and half on the road. So
Right.
it's not like we're going to be all of a sudden be a West Coast team that's playing all of our games in the Midwest. It's only 4 weekends that we're
True.
traveling, and one of those 4 weekends is going to be to either Oregon or Washington,
Right.
which is
'Cause
a
we're
traditional
still,
team.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
now we're only
Okay.
saying it's 3 weekends that we're traveling to the Big Ten footprint, and so yeah, it's all postulation right now, and I can twist it however I want.
You're making
But
me feel better though, and that's all that matters, because
but
I was like, no, please say
yeah,
this is
the
not
the
happening.
climate might be a little
Yeah.
different in some of the locations
Yeah.
in March and
Yeah.
April.
Frosty
So yeah,
softball, that's for
it
sure.
might be.
Yeah.
I think we're scheduled to play in Iowa in March next year. So at the end of March. So that might be a little chilly.
Yeah.
So we might be packing a few layers of clothing, and Kelly
Yeah.
might have two parkas on, but I don't know. We'll see.
She always looks
But
bundled up.
yeah, she can't handle the dugout when it's shady. So I don't know, but it's going to be all right. I think
Yeah.
it's just a different environment, but it's part of the game.
Okay, I'm down with it. It's taken me a little bit longer, but it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, yeah,
All right, let's pivot to Olympics. This first of all, I talked to Michelle Smith a couple of years ago, who I'm obsessed with her. I love her. Just one of the coolest people, I think, in sports. Just her career on the field, and all her years in Japan, and now ESPN reporter. Like her, Beth Mowens, Jessica Mendoza, Michelle Smith,
the
Holly
trio.
Rowe,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
trio, and then you add Holly Rowe, and I'm like,
yeah.
this is the
That's
greatest.
Mount Rushmore, right there, right?
Absolutely, Mount Rushmore.
Yeah.
But when I was I had a really good, discussion when I was just so aggravated when they pull softball out in the Olympics, they put it back in, they pull it out. But I was irate that it wasn't in Paris. I'm still irate because, breakdancing is in. I don't want to talk about that. I already complained 2 podcasts ago against that. But the fact that it's in the 2028 Olympics is so exciting. Obviously, we're both LA residents. And then we get the news last week that, oh, it's actually going to be in Oklahoma. And I almost just threw the computer off the balcony. I was like, I cannot. I'm already like, Oklahoma's not my team. Obviously, dynasty, all the respect in the world. Unbelievable. Am I so sick of them winning? Absolutely. But now the Olympics are ripped from LA and put in Oklahoma. I'm not happy. Kirk, talk me through this.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of with you. So we might be fueling each other's rage here.
Yes.
Yeah, it's yeah. Once again, listen, the Hall of Fame Stadium is beautiful. It's
Yeah.
amazing. It is the community itself has done an amazing job of backing softball. So it's really not about Oklahoma City, to be honest
Yeah.
with you.
Yeah.
It's about LA.
Yeah.
And that opportunity, the experience of being in the village, the experience for the LA, which is so steeped in baseball and softball, to be able to host that event. So yeah, it's troubling. Yeah, I don't have a whole lot of answers. I
Can we
still
get
feel
it
like
back? Is there time?
well, listen, I am all in to try and get it back, and I've already been, my wheels have been spinning. So about a year ago, I was, who knows if I'm sharing information I shouldn't share, but whatever, I'm sharing it. So I was on the phone with Patty Gasso, one of my really close friends. And I said, hey, Patty, I got an idea. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to put a game in Dodger Stadium, Oklahoma versus UCLA. We're going to set the NCAA record for attendance, just like they did at Nebraska
Yes.
and for all that.
Yes.
I'm like, we
Yeah.
got this. I'm like, are you kidding me? Patty's like, I am all in. So I get on with the Dodgers and I'm talking with the Dodgers. The Dodgers are in for the most part. The scheduling issue becomes a little bit of an issue, and we get really close to making it happen this last February. And part of my whole goal and focus is, hello, the Olympics are coming to LA. We got to figure out how we're going to put softball in Dodger Stadium during
Yeah.
the Olympics. So let's practice that with this. And I still believe we need to do this. I'm throwing this out there to my friends at Dodger Stadium, and I know that Patty will be right there with me.
Billie
That
Jean King. We
right.
got it. She makes literally everything happen and she's in bed with the Dodgers.
So listen, so it's all about trying to figure out, like, we're going to prove to the LA 28 Olympic Committee that softball can be happening here in LA, at Dodger Stadium, and we're going to put 30,000 people in the stands, which we can't do in Oklahoma City. And let's figure out how to do that and that it can be viable. Obviously, there's other complications during the Olympics because the Olympics happen right in the middle of pro baseball, but that's okay. We'll figure that out. The Dodgers could play down at Angel Stadium for a few days. I don't know.
Give me an assignment. I will do anything.
So this is still
takes.
twisting in my head. I'm just telling you, it's all very fresh
Yeah.
with the news that we just had, that I'm like, we can still make this happen. We're going to prove them wrong, and we're going to figure out how to make this happen. So if we can get Oklahoma versus UCLA softball in Dodger Stadium in this next year, and prove that it's viable, it can happen, and we can fill those bleachers, I think they might think twice about taking it out of LA. But
I will round up every
fantasy.
lesbian in the state of California and get them to that stadium. So that you just tell me, you call me anytime and you let me know what you need, because
all right.
when I heard that news, I was losing my mind. Another thing is too, without this awesome, obviously killer idea, Oklahoma UCLA at Dodger Stadium, part of the whole, when a city, gets to host the Olympics, infrastructure, there money comes in and you build out what you have. And I thought, okay, if you just took, I'm just, pulling this out of my ass, but like, a field in Van Nuys, there's also like tons of fields in Glendale, whatever. You put money in, you build it out, then you're also creating a possibility for LA to host the Women's College World Series. Like, this is just, and building out the sport and hosting our national team and hosting our elite team. So it not only was just so aggravating for the Olympics itself, it's like, this is just part of how the Olympics, that's what you do.
That's how the Olympics leave a lasting mark on the city that it's in. 100%. We are right there. Our minds
Kirk, we got to make this happen.
I know. And I'm telling you, there's a plot of land at Dodger Stadium. It's a reserved parking lot that isn't often used, dirt parking lot that is actually above Dodger Stadium that overlooks downtown LA. It is the most beautiful piece of land, and I am telling you that 4 acres that's right there needs to get turned into a softball stadium right there, right next to Dodger Stadium. So that's all I'm saying. But yeah, we got lots of things that we could try and change the world here if we could. So I will come calling when I have some ideas and ways that we can make a difference.
Call me anytime. It's called 1-800 Billie Jean King. That is the first phone call. I mean, she's
all in. I'm telling you.
She did like a hockey league in like a year. I mean, that woman is like, she wears a cape and she just makes things happen.
Blue and red glasses, and she just brings the world around.
Yeah. Okay. The transition from, obviously, the stats for NCAA softball are off the charts. Like, 1.6 million viewers, 2020, like they're just millions and millions and millions. Everyone was just like, if you build it, they will come. And I'm like, it's been built. It's been fantastic. You just have to put a TV camera in front of it. And obviously the sport is exploding. Now, the professional level, it gets confusing even me as a fan to be like, where do I watch? Where are the leagues? It reminds me of kind of the NWSL, the iterations, pre WNBA. Athletes Unlimited obviously now just announced they're going to have more of a traditional league 2025, 2026. You've got women's professional fast pitch, but that is kind of two teams here. Oklahoma City, what is it, Sparks, or I think
Yep.
that's what they're called. They're like now independent. It's a little bit of a clusterfuck, like, but
Very
all
much.
seemingly going in the right direction. But what do you think, in your opinion, needs to kind of happen to get this going?
Um,
You probably have to be politically correct, but like but
mhm.
like in
Uh,
general,
yes.
too many feuding lesbians behind the scenes.
Um, so listen, this has been a consternation of mine for heavily for the last 5 years.
Yeah,
And what this is the one thing I'm going to say is that first and foremost, as a softball fan, I want every pro league, every pro opportunity to thrive and succeed. I don't
yeah,
want anything to fail. That being said, it's frustrating when models are created and recreated that are a failed model, and nobody steps in to say, hey, this can be done better. The product is there, the
yes,
popularity of the sport is there. Like, it's like literally, it's figure out the model that will work, because the people will come, the people will watch. And how is this going to be sustainable? Not how is this going to be just funded? Because the last 40 years of pro leagues that have come and gone have all just taken millions of dollars and sucked it off and paid, and then it's squandered and it hasn't left anything that's been sustainable. So it is frustrating. I do think that there are some key people that need to be in the rooms. Again, I felt like there was some movement happening 2 years ago that was going to align some of those forces. And unfortunately, what we don't want to see happen is competing leagues.
yeah,
And we saw this. And so, to be honest with you, a lot of the movement that we saw a few years ago has all backed off.
mm,
There's some big money and big interest that has all kind of backed off because um, people are trying to do these other pro leagues and things that are happening, and it's like we can't compound our failure by trying to compete in these other pro leagues. So at some point in time, unfortunately, it's a little bit of a waiting game until we can get all the people aligned to actually do something that works well. AU is super cool. I love the outside the box format. It is an absolute, that format is perfect for off season, for between a regular season, for specific segments of time. I think that's great. As AU is going to enter into a traditional league format, again, I am fully supportive. I'm cautious because I don't know that they're I don't know what it's going to look like, or if it's going
yeah.
to try and repeat a failed model. And I think that whatever happens, softball should be played year round in our
Yeah.
country.
Yeah.
It can't be played year round everywhere in our country, but it should be being played year round in our country. So whatever we do create, I think there is room to thrive in all parts of the country. And there's ways to put our amazing sport on television consistently year round to an audience that will be loyal, dedicated, and committed.
If we,
And I'll leave it at that.
I say we because I'm part of the UCLA team. If we lose you as a coach, the only way I'm going to be happy about this is if you run, if you are now in charge of for like putting together a professional league. So I think that instead of a professional pickleball career, maybe you should take an even larger assignment on bringing a stable professional league
Well,
together.
I love the sport, and I
It's
would
so
love to see a
great.
sustainable
Yeah.
pro league
Yeah.
exist. And if there's any way for me to facilitate and be a part of that and help that,
Yeah.
I would absolutely be on board. So
Yeah.
we will see what comes of it. Again, it was there's some great opportunity out there, and I hope that we in our sport can get past some of the territorial
Yeah.
concepts and ideas and really just get aligned, because it's such a great game.
Yeah. And I think, it's one of these things where it's just we're inching closer and closer and closer. And I think like the NIL deals now are making these, these women have like, you can see it in basketball, how it translated from March Madness, or NCAA to the WNBA with the Niger Kennedys. And like all of them are now like people want to follow them. Then they fall in love with the sport. But I'm still like, our national team is being streamed, like they have huge games this weekend, and it's like
Yeah.
stream it on, it's hard. I am digging to find
Yeah.
it, so
Yeah.
if it's curated for the fan, it will, rise and rise and rise. So hopefully everybody
I
can get
agree.
on the same page,
I agree. I agree. And it's interesting where we're going with this, because even with the NIL and the portal, and now with the House legislation settlement that's coming down the pike with revenue sharing, we are going to see college athletics look very different in 2 years. And to be honest with you, we're probably going to see it look a little bit more like a semi-pro
Mm.
level in some sports, in some parts, in some conferences. It's going to be almost semi-professional. So we might have the beginnings of our pro model actually might coming out of the future of what Division I super level looks like.
That's
And that
interesting.
and
Yeah.
that could be interesting, and it could be pretty exciting to see. Lots of
All right.
change.
I guess I'll be patient, which is not one of my strong suits. Okay, last thing. Obviously, one of my favorite things in life is to see gay people in charge of everything. And especially the cross section of you know, any LGBTQ member, in sports, then my head blows off with excitement. So I was already just obviously a huge fan of yours. But then, on the deep dive, I, researched sort of this, I thought just a phenomenal moment that I just want you to share with the listeners. And I know you've been asked this before, but you're one of the only out gay coaches. And I had read you were saying like you didn't want to be like, oh, you're the gay coach. And it happens to me, oh, you're the gay comic for this lineup. And you're like, I'm just a comic, you're just a coach. We happen to be gay. But,
Mhm.
it does come with a level of, if you want to, a level of responsibility and a level of like, just promoting equality and authenticity. So that moment in 2005 when you came out to the Oregon State team, um, I just love what you had to say. And I was wondering if you could just kind of just talk us through that
Yeah,
moment, because it's super inspiring.
yeah. It was interesting. Obviously, I'll give you the Reader's Digest version because you can read up on it. But yeah, so I came out publicly because I was going to be adopting with my partner, and so it wasn't really I was like going to be like
Yeah.
I'm going to jump on a float and like
Yeah.
make a big announcement and
Yeah.
whatever. It was like I wanted to tell my team. I had been comfortably out with my partner in my personal life. I had never told my team, and so Sid Ziegler with Outsports and Jim Basinski with Outsports had always wanted to do a story on me, and I said no, not until I tell my team, and I haven't told my team, and so finally I'm going to adopt. I need to tell my team. First team meeting of the fall in 2005. We just came off of our very successful year. I'm like, all right, now's as good a time any. I share with them. I can tell you right now, I can vividly remember the locker room, what it felt like, where everyone was, where everyone was sitting. I can't remember a thing that I said because I blacked out. But I know that I rambled on and on about adopting my partner, a baby, this, that, da, da, da. Do you have any questions? And when the hands went up, all of a sudden the lights went on. I was like,
Mm.
oh my God, like I don't even know what I just said. And now they have questions. All the questions were about the baby and about, when's the baby coming? Is there a boy or girl? What's the baby's name? I'm like, I'm getting anything else? And like, so yeah, so it was an interesting time. So Outsports runs a story. It gets picked up by the Portland Tribune. Portland Tribune. It gets picked up by the New York Daily News, ESPN magazine. Next thing you know, it's like I'm the gay coach,
Mm.
and it's all over. It's everywhere, and it's big news. And I'm thinking, okay, this is not big news, right? I've been coaching softball for at the time like 30 years. I'm like, it's not that big a deal. Like I know plenty of lesbians that are coaching in women's sports. Yeah. But what I learned really quickly is there's a big difference between privately out and publicly out.
Mm.
And so when the media asked me, well, who else is out? I'm like, there's plenty of gay coaches. Who? And they put the microphone under my mouth, and I'm like, I got it. I guess I can't say. I'm like, I can't
Yeah.
out somebody. I'm like, everybody knows, but I can't say. So it was a really interesting time. So all the articles that I was quoted in for those 2 years, for about a year and a half, 2 years maybe, it was like the gay coach, and I
Mm.
was so tired of being labeled as the gay coach. And then it finally hit me. I'm like, you know what? Screw it. It doesn't matter, because all of these positive things that are happening because I'm the gay coach and because I'm being labeled as the gay coach, and all these conversations that are now happening at Nike, and all of these things that were happening in the LGBT sports diversity world, I'm like, those are things that would never have happened if I hadn't come out. So let them
Yeah.
call me the gay coach. I don't really care. So I flipped
Yeah.
pretty quickly to say, call me whatever you want to call me. If you really want to know about my softball resume, you can look at that. That's pretty clean and clear. But
Yeah.
if you just want to introduce me as the gay coach and whatever, I'm going to take that and I'm going to run with it, because it created a platform and an opportunity for me to create a dialogue about that needed to happen. And that was what, 16, 17, I don't even know, 17, 18 years, I don't know how long it's been, years ago,
Almost 20 years
18,
ago. Yeah.
almost 20
Wow.
years ago.
Yeah.
The number of coaches that are out publicly, the number of
Yeah.
coaches that are out to their teams, it's just amazing, and it's fascinating to me. And but yet when I realized, when I was told that I was the only publicly out Division I coach, I said, I'm not. And they said, who? And I'm like, I guess I am.
Wow. Yeah. You're like,
So yeah, but
yeah.
it's led to a lot of great things. Nike has been amazing. Helped to launch the Be True campaign with Nike. Helped to form several different nonprofits and coalitions, and currently with the Sports Equality Foundation, a new nonprofit that is really focused on empowering LGBT athletes and coaches to be change agents, right? To be visible, to be connected, to create opportunities, and to educate. And I think that it's always going to be a conversation, because we will always be a minority. We will always be an invisible minority. So it's always going to be a relevant conversation. There are people in the gay community that want to say, well, I just can't wait for the day when it just, nobody has to come out. I'm like, well, nobody does have to come out ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, just live your life. That's fine. The problem is that there's generations of kids that don't know, because we're not visible, that they feel like they're isolated, they're alone, and that there isn't a future for them. I'm like, that's not okay. So we're always going to have to come out. Every time I meet somebody for the first time that hasn't, I don't carry my articles around with me and say, oh, I'm going to meet somebody. Hey, read an article on me first before you say hi. I always have to, at some point in time, self-identify as either having adopted my daughter with my partner, or happen to be, no, I'm not married to a woman. I'm married to man. Well,
Yeah.
I'm still
Yeah.
single, but if I were married, so I think it's always going to be a self-disclosure, and that's okay. To me, that's always an opportunity to have a conversation or to see how someone else reacts. It's not a reflection on me. It's a reflection on the person that's receiving
Mm.
the information, on what the status is, right? It's not.
Yeah.
It's always interesting to say, and more times than not, and I say this to my dying grave, is that sports and the sports community and sports world is far more welcoming and valuable to LGBT people than has ever been perceived or talked about. There are certainly negative situations. There are certainly negative fears and insecurities that have happened around sports. There's language that happens around sports. But when you talk about people and somebody coming out, we see overwhelmingly that LGBT people are supported by their teammates, by their peers, by their coaching peers, by the fans, by and large. And so the sports community is a great community. And we need to make sure that that is heard around the world for that next generation coming out.
No, literally just got chills. It's so well said. It's so true. Also, just the mere fact that you're out, I can imagine, like, they're kids. You get 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, and just to know automatically, well, my coach is gay, so everything is okay. Like, just, or obviously some other players, just to know, like, oh, there's someone representing the university, a coach that's out. That's like, okay, I'm going to relax just a little, you know, even when I was doing comedy all the years, um,
Mm,
in these places, like, you know, you're like, oh, what I'd have to plan it. I do 10, 15 minutes of just jokes. And I would call it the BGR, big gay reveal. I'd get the
mhm.
audience like, okay, everything okay? And then
Right,
rip
get them
off
on
the
your
mask.
side, get them laughing, and
Ah,
then
hey,
here
I'm
comes the
gay,
ugly.
you know?
Here comes the ugly secret. Right?
You
Yeah.
know? And so, but I just thought like, well, first of all, it's part of my act. It's part of, you know, it took me 10 years on stage to even say I was gay. But like, you know, just I would leave that city or whatever it was, and I'd be like, well, you know, I said it, you know, like maybe someone in the crowd or someone's parent is just like, oh, okay, well, she seems fun. She doesn't have horns, like whatever,
Right.
you know?
Right.
So
Right.
just the
Right.
mere fact of you being on such a national scale and being out and being, you know, comfortable, and it's just, it's so impactful, and it's just so amazing. But I totally get the gay coach of it and the gay comic where you're like, God, I just, you know, I have enough stress trying to send a person from second base to home, for God's sakes.
Oh, if he was straight, he wouldn't have said her. She would have been safe if he was straight. Right. I get that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but
Not
it's
my
just,
thought. When she's tagged out at home, I'm not thinking, man, if I was straight, she would have been safe. I don't think that. So hopefully the fans aren't too. So
oh
yeah.
my God. Well, that would be an insane person that should never be watching the game. All right, 30 more seconds. This is it. You know, I just have to ask you this. 2019, um, Rachel Garcia is on the mound, UCLA, Oklahoma, Women's College World Series. And if listeners, if you have not, just go back and watch the complete start to finish seventh inning. Um, Rachel Garcia goes out there. The 10-second backstory is I convinced my mom, who does not watch women's softball on television. I sucked her in. I was there for like a week. And so we started watching super regionals together. Then I got her locked in. She was losing her mind. She became the biggest UCLA fan overnight. She's screaming out, Rachel is going to lose her arm. Her arm's going to fall off. Like she was on her 700 pitch, and we're 1 out away. And then the Shea Knighton bomb ties the score 4-4. And I'm thinking, how much longer is her arm going to, you know, hold up? So then you go into I mean, honestly, Kirk, I've watched so many sports in my life, and that had to be one of the most stressful games I've ever seen in my life. I can't imagine what it was like to coach this game. Then you're sitting on the third base coach, you know, is probably, I don't know, I think 2 outs, 1 out, and you have to send the runner. Like,
Yeah.
just
It
talk me through that.
well, I mean, it really when you bring me right back there as you
Yeah.
describe it. So your description is amazing. You know, when she gave up that home run, it was that that was as stressful as I think I've ever coached was in that moment. And and you're thinking to yourself constantly like, just could you have not thrown any other pitch? Could you have
Yeah.
not thrown it just 2 inches higher? Could you have
I
not
know. I know.
like seriously, like you're just like, oh, how do you get that back? You know, and then here we go into extra innings. And it was one of those games where it was like it was going to take something outside the ordinary. It was clearly both teams were so dug in, and Oklahoma was so determined and so locked in because we had, you know, embarrassed them the day
Yeah.
before, that it was like they were not going to stop fighting any second of the day. So, you know, when we had that opportunity, I knew we put a runner in at second base. It was one of our backup outfielders, and she hadn't really been a pinch runner for us all year. She was decently fast, right? She was pretty good speed, but she wasn't necessarily this amazing base runner. So when Kinsley Washington was up, and in this moment, you know, there's 2 outs. I'm like, we have to score here. Rachel's arm, like Rachel
Yeah.
cannot go any
Yeah.
farther. They're going to score. We've got to score. So literally, when Kinsey hit that ball, I literally my first instinct was crap because it was not
It
hit
wasn't
in a
deep.
way.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, it was
Yeah.
not deep, and it was a blooper. But then, as it was coming down, I'm like, this is going to be tough. She's going to have to switch her body because it was hit a little bit to her glove side, the outfielder's glove side. And so at that point in time, I'm like, I can't, I'm not stopping her. She is
Yeah.
going, she's got to go. and we're going to have to force an error or mistake to happen. And so, obviously, as I turned to look down the line and had a great view down the line of the slide, as soon as I saw the catcher come up the line to get the ball, the errant throw, and come up the line, I'm like, oh my God, we got a chance. And then when Jackie slid around the tag, it was probably one of the greatest feelings ever at that moment in time that I had sent her.
Yeah.
And oftentimes I'm thinking, you know, what if I hadn't sent her? What would we even won? Would we have won that
Yeah.
game? Would have gone 3 games? Like, what would have ever happened? And I shut that off as quickly as I can, because you just can't ever do the woulda couldas. But it was a little bit, it was a risky move for sure, but it felt like it was our only opportunity to get that game done so that Rachel could get off that mound.
I hope you are now in love with Kirk Walker, as I am. I was such a fan before we had this interview, but now, of course, I am absolutely obsessed. And I know it got a little bit nerdy towards the end when I was talking about Rachel Garcia and that one moment in UCLA history. So, yes, I know that was super nerdy. However, if you haven't seen that game, or you just, you have an hour or you have a half hour and you're like, what should I watch? Go on YouTube and watch that seventh inning, because it is just such a compelling, awesome moment in softball history, if I do say so myself. And it was just so, I was just like, I have to ask him what was going through his mind when that moment happened, because I of course remember it like yesterday. And also do a deep dive on his LGBTQ advocacy work, because it really is tremendous. He's just the coolest guy on and off the field. And that was one of my all-time favorite interviews. So thanks to Kirk. God, I felt like I was like checking the clock, but I wanted to talk to him for another 4 hours. Okay, people, it is that time of the podcast, the feel good moment of the week. One of my favorite things is the lead up to the Olympics, all the Olympic trials, the USA Olympic trials, because there's some tearjerker moments and you get to know the athletes, and it's just super cool prep before we head into the Olympics. And this was a great feel good moment and a no brainer for the feel good moment of the week. In the 100-meter dash, so it's the Olympic track and field trials, was last weekend, and then the 100-meter dash, which is the world's fastest woman or fastest man, that's what they call the 100-meter dash. So obviously I'm covering the world's fastest woman. And in that trials, Sha'Carri Richardson, who's been an athlete I've been tracking now for years, she won the 100-meter dash, right? Now, Richardson has such a compelling story because she did this whole Olympic trials, 3 years ago in 2021 in preparation for Tokyo. She won the event. She made the Olympic team, but then she tested positive for marijuana, and could not, and it eliminated her. She could not go to the Olympics. It was a huge story. Her biological mother had died a week before the Olympic trials. So to cope, she used marijuana like as a coping mechanism, and she was kicked off the team. I mean, it was so heartbreaking, and it kind of derailed her for a couple of years. So her story to get back on track, pardon the pun, and put in all this hard work and to overcome that story. I mean, she's so young. She's like 24. So she comes out. This is this is it. This is the heat to go to the Olympics. Comes in first with a time of 10.71, the fastest time in the world this year. Obviously, no brainer, feel good moment of the week, but it gets better. She has 2 training partners in Florida with her, Melissa Jefferson and Twanisha Terry. Now, there are 9 runners competing in the 100-meter dash. Those are her 2 training partners, right? So the odds of them getting 1, 2, 3 in this, final heat, very slim. They got 1, 2, 3. Melissa Jefferson comes in second, 10.8 seconds. Twanisha Terry comes in third, 10.89. They all cross the finish line. They're screaming, they're hugging. They look up and they realize they're 1, 2, 3. They're going to the Olympics. I'm going to start crying. Get it together, Erin Foley. It was so feel good. They were, I mean, they're training partners. They said they wouldn't be able to, they wouldn't have been able to do it without each other, pushing each other. They're more than teammates, they're sisters. Oh my God. It was very emotional. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm holding back tears. But to see Sha'Carri Richardson, if it was just Sha'Carri Richardson overcoming all of that to get to the Olympics, it would have been feel good moment of the week. But training partners going 1, 2, 3, I can't stand it. I'm just getting so excited for the Olympics. So keep those runners, all of them, on your radar. Sha'Carri Richardson, Melissa Jefferson, Twanisha Terry. They are going to be representing the USA for the 100-meter dash, the world's fastest woman. It's going to be so exciting. So put those women on your radar because we get to see them run in, I don't know, about a month when the Olympics start. So feel good, so exciting. And that is our show. Happy 4th. Have a great holiday. Fans, friends, family, have the best week of your life.